Most people watched the clip and laughed along. Nobody stopped to ask why Trump went silent for 11 seconds in the middle of a comedy segment, and why his team never addressed those 11 seconds in any of the 4 statements they released before morning. Nobody in that studio expected what Jim Carrey brought inside his jacket. Not the producers, not the warm-up comedian who had worked the El Capitan's stage-side entrance for 6 years and had seen every conceivable version of a guest appearance arrive through that door. Not Kimmel himself, who had been briefed on the broad shape of the segment. Carrey, Trump commentary, the political paintings that had been running through gallery shows since 2018, but had not been briefed on the specific item. The item that changed everything was not a document. It was not a folder. It was smaller than either of those things. It fit in a jacket pocket. And the moment Carrey placed it on the desk between himself and Kimmel, the segment stopped being a segment and became something that 38 million people would spend the next 72 hours trying to categorize. Now, a different room. 6 months earlier, a private gallery in Los Angeles. Late afternoon, the kind of light that comes through industrial windows near closing time. Long and orange and honest. Jim Carrey is standing in front of a canvas, not performing, working. The painting on the easel was a portrait. Trump, rendered in the particular style Carrey had been developing since 2017. Hyper-realistic in the bone structure, expressionistic in the eyes, the kind of portrait that shows you exactly what a face looks like and also exactly what the face is doing when it believes no one is documenting it. A curator who was present for the session said Carrey didn't speak for 40 minutes. He painted, he stepped back, he looked, he painted again. When he finally said something, it was not about the painting. It was about a specific press conference he had watched that morning, a specific answer to a specific question that had lasted 3 minutes and 40 seconds and had never, at any point in those 3 minutes and 40 seconds, touched the thing that was actually being asked. He said, "That's the scaffolding, right there. You can see it in the eyes." He said it to no one in particular. The curator wrote it down. Back to the El Capitan, the desk, the item on the surface between Carrey and Kimmel, placed there with the particular care of something that has been waiting a long time for the right surface to rest on. It was a painting, small, 8 inches by 10, the kind of working study that precedes a larger canvas. Rolled and unrolled now, weighted at the corners with 2 items Carrey had pulled from the same jacket pocket, a pen and a coin, placed at the top corners, with the deliberate efficiency of a man who had done this before and knew exactly how much weight was needed to hold the edges flat. The painting was of Trump, specifically Trump at a lectern, specifically the expression Trump makes in the moment between answering a question and realizing the answer didn't work. That fraction of a second, Carrey had caught it, not in a photograph, which would have been evidence, but in paint, which is interpretation, which is in some ways more precise. The eyes in the painting were doing something the eyes in official photographs never do. They were locating the exit. Kimmel looked at it for 3 seconds without speaking. Then he started laughing. Not the performance laugh of a late-night host filling space. The other kind. The kind that arrives before the professional instinct can intercept it. His shoulders came forward. His hand went flat on the desk. He laughed the way a person laughs when something is so precisely true that the only available response is physical. The audience laughed with him. All of it, all at once. The collective release of 400 people who had been watching a man unroll a painting with the gravity of a man unrolling evidence. Carrey wasn't laughing. He was looking at the painting the way he always looks at his Trump paintings, with the attention of someone taking an inventory of a thing they understand at depth and find, on reflection, not funny. He said, "I've been painting him for 8 years. He said that in 8 years of painting a face, you learn things about it that the face doesn't know you know. He said he had painted the jaw 14 different ways, and only 2 of them corresponded to something real. He said, the other 12 are scaffolding, built to hold a shape that the 2 real ones can't maintain on their own. He said the word for the first time quietly, factually, a painter naming a technical element. And the audience, which had been laughing 20 seconds earlier, went completely still. Kimmel said, "Which 2 are real?" Carrey pointed to a specific area of the painting, the area around the eyes in the fraction of a second expression, the exit locating expression. He said, "That one." He pointed to a second area, the jaw in a state of lateral compression, side to side, the involuntary muscle response that arrives when words are being chosen very carefully because the wrong ones would be expensive. He said, "And that one." He said everything else in the public performance of that face, the confidence, the ease, the flat superiority of a man who enters rooms believing he has already won them, was constructed. Not dishonest, exactly. Something more specific than dishonest. Constructed the way a building is constructed. with intention, with craft, with real material, but assembled, not grown. Load-bearing where it needed to be, decorative where it could afford to be, held up at the structural level by the specific combination of those two real things and everything built around them. The audience was not laughing now. A woman in the third row had her hand over her mouth, not in shock, but in the way a person covers their mouth when they recognize something they have seen before and couldn't name until this moment. A man in the fifth row was staring at the painting from 40 feet away with the expression of someone reading a document they hadn't expected to understand. The floor director, standing at the back with his clipboard, had stopped looking at his cue sheet. Kimmel said, "So you're saying it's all performance?" Carrey said, "I'm saying the performance has scaffolding, and the scaffolding has been visible for 8 years to anyone looking at the right 2 inches of the face." He tapped the painting once, on the eyes, with his index finger. He said, "Right here, every time, without fail." He said, "I paint it because painting it is the only way I know to show someone what I mean. You can describe a thing for 8 years, and people will argue with the description. You paint it once, and the argument moves somewhere different. It moves into whether the painting is accurate, and that is a much more interesting argument to be having." Now, back to the gallery. 6 months earlier, the curator asks Carrey if he ever worried about the paintings being dismissed as partisan. Carrey is not answering immediately, stepping back from the canvas. Looking at it from the distance of 6 feet, which is the distance at which a painting either holds together or reveals its construction, he said, "Partisan means you're on a side. I'm not on a side. I'm on a face." He said, "I'm on the 2 inches of a face that doesn't lie when everything else is lying. And I've been on those 2 inches for 8 years. And nobody from his team has ever disputed the paintings because you can't dispute a painting the way you can dispute a statement. A statement can be called fake. A painting just sits there." He looked at the canvas for another 4 seconds. Then he said, "The scaffolding doesn't show in the photographs. That's the whole point of scaffolding." Back to the desk. The small painting between Carrey and Kimmel was weighted flat at the corners. Kimmel looking at it with the expression of a man who had been laughing 30 seconds ago and was now doing something entirely different. Not sobered exactly, but recalibrated. He said, "You're not actually joking, are you?" Carrey said, "I'm always joking." He paused. He said, "That doesn't mean I'm wrong." The audience laughed again. But differently, not the release laugh of before, not the collective surrender to something absurd. The laughter of people who had just understood that the man in front of them had been delivering a serious argument through a comedic surface for the entire segment, and they had been laughing along without fully tracking what was accumulating underneath. The laugh of recognition, slightly uncomfortable, the kind that lingers. Trump posted before midnight, calling Carrey washed up, talentless, and desperate for attention. The post was longer than it needed to be. It described the painting as embarrassing and the segment as proof that the left had run out of ideas. It used the word loser in the 3rd paragraph. It was screenshotted and posted beside Carrey's comment, "I'm on the 2 inches of a face that doesn't lie," without annotation or caption. The juxtaposition required neither. By morning, the painting had been photographed from multiple angles by journalists who had been in the studio and posted at high resolution. Art forums ran analysis threads, not political analysis, formal analysis, composition, brushwork, what Carrey had done technically to render the eyes in the moment he was describing. 3 gallery curators in separate cities posted threads about how rarely a small working study captures a specific psycho-emotional state with that precision. They did not mention Trump by name. They discussed the painting as a painting. The scaffolding comment ran as a separate clip. 22 seconds, just Carrey's voice and the image of his finger on the canvas. It trended independently of the full segment. People who had never followed political comedy were sharing it with the caption, "This is the most accurate thing I've seen said about power in years." Kimmel, on the following night's show, said only one thing about the appearance, that he had laughed first and then spent the rest of the evening thinking about why. He said he was still thinking about it. He said he thought most people were. The scaffolding doesn't show in the photographs. That's the whole point of scaffolding. And once someone shows you where it is, in paint, in the 2 specific inches that don't perform, you cannot stop seeing it. In every photograph, in every press conference, in every room he walks into, believing he has already won. If this changed how you see power, hit subscribe. If it didn't, watch it again. The details you missed the first time are the ones that matter most. Notifications on. The next one drops soon.